Hey there, Anthony with the Piano Dojo weekly proficiency videos here. We're in week 5, and that's the home stretch. All right, we only have a few more scales left. Week 6 next week will be our last week in this unit. So this is going to be another easy week. We're only going to look at our syncopation. We're going to add 2 more scales, A flat major and E flat major. And then we will look at a sight reading piece called March, and it will be a little bit more difficult than anything that we've looked at so far. We're going to add a new harmonic mechanism, and we're going to talk about musical cliches. All right, so before that, let's just go on over to the drum and get ourselves warmed up. All right, let's get started on our week 5 rhythm warm-up. We all know the drill by now, so we're going to start on the top line. We're going to have the metronome at 40 BPM, and it's going to represent the downbeats. We'll start with our right hand on the top rhythmic line, and our left hand is going to read the quarter notes underneath that. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, change your hands. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, hands together, top line. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4. Fantastic. All right, let's speed the metronome up to 45. And now this will represent the upbeats. We'll read in line 2, starting with our right hand on the syncopated top line. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and switch hands. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and top line hands together. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and fantastic. All right, we'll go up to 50 BPM, but we're going to put the metronome on half time. We're going to take 2 of those clicks away. So we're going to put the metronome on 25, and those clicks will represent the first and the third downbeats. So here we go. We'll go like this. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and switch your hands. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and now the top line hands together. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4. There we go. All right, we'll keep our metronome on half time, so we're going to speed it up to 30 BPM, although we will really be going at 60, all right, although our metronome is on half time. And this will now represent the second and the fourth downbeat, all right? So line 4, here we go. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2 and 3 and switch hands. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2 and hands together, top line. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 and there we go. Excellent. All right, so by now hopefully this warm-up is getting easier for you. And being week 5, we have one more week next week, week 6 in this unit. And after that, we actually will add another layer to our rhythm warm-up. So hopefully by the time you get comfortable with it, I'll be able to raise the bar one step higher. So don't worry, if you feel like this is getting too easy, we will be raising the bar pretty soon in our next unit, which is going to be chords. But until then, let's go back to the piano. Okay. Let's take a look at A flat major. So as you can see, just like in the other black note scales, we have 3 different hand positions. 1, 2, 3. Remember, we're going to lift in between each one of those. We don't want to twist our arm, twist our wrist, and look like we're flapping our wing like a bird. And that's also going to be going on in the left hand. We have 3 different regions. Now, before we actually put this onto the scale, let's go to our circle and check out those flats. All right, so here we have our circle, and we're going to come down here and we're going to add our flats, which is going to be a very easy process at this point because it is merely the process of elimination. We're going to keep the B flat, the E flat, obviously the A flat, and then last but not least, we will add that D flat, leave off the G flat from the last scale, and there we have it, 4 flats. Now, A flat can be a little tricky, and the reason is because it doesn't have all 5 black notes anymore, but also it's not mostly white notes. It's kind of an in-between scale, and therefore it can take a little bit of extra time to get it to become your friend. But don't worry, we're going to go ahead and look at it on the keyboard and get that sorted out. So we're going to start with our right hand, and we're going to do some blocking first. So the first thing we're going to do is start in this position. Then we're going to move to this position, and last but not least, right here. One more, back down. Notice how we're only using 3 fingers here. Unfortunately, our 4th finger and our pinky don't get to participate in the right hand A flat major scale, but when we put it all together, it'll go like this. All right, and then we're going to block the left hand. Putting it all together. And then once you get comfortable with that, you can take as long as you need. We're going to put it hands together. Excellent. All right, now let's take a look at E flat. All right, so here we have it. Again, we're going to be taking away one black note. We have 3 different positions that we're going to be in each hand. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. All right, let's quickly go to our circle and add those flats in. So again, we're going to take out the last flat of the last scale. So we'll have our E flat, A flat. Scooch this over just a smidge for us. And there we have our E flat major scale, 3 flats, and we will take a look at that on the piano now. All right, so we're going to start with our blocking. So the first step in our right hand goes like this. The next one goes like this. And finally up to here. Back down. All right, so let's try that out. There we have it. And let's look at the left hand. We're going to block it first. Looks like that. Back down. And put it all together. Excellent. And let's put our hands together now. Fantastic, and that does it. There's our major scales for the day, and that was nice and quick, wasn't it? We only have 2 more to do, and they're getting progressively easier as we get rid of those black keys. So let's move on to our sight reading now. I really like this sight reading piece. It is more challenging than the first 3 that we've looked at. And we're going to add a few concepts today. We're going to add a new harmonic concept, and we're also going to add the concept of the musical cliche. All right? Not only do we want to look out for chords, scales, and those major shapes like that, but just like in any language, there's also cliches that are said all the time. And so we're going to be on the lookout for some musical cliches in this piece. All right? Now, before we actually put our hands on it, we're going to do a harmonic analysis. So let's go ahead and look right here at our key signature. We see we have 1 sharp, and we know that that will correlate to the scale that comes after C, which on our circle is G, right? 1 sharp. So we're going to be in the key of G major, all right? So that means that up here, our 1 is going to equal G, B, and D. And our 5 will be D, F sharp, and A, all right? So let's go ahead and take a look at the first measure. I see a lot of B's, and I see a G in the bass, in that foundational bass category, right? So we do have a little passing tone with this C right here, but that goes up to a chord tone. So remember, we're not going to factor that in. So this is very clearly a 1. All right. Moving right along, we have an F sharp in the bass. That should set off a red flag. I see a chord up there that has an F sharp in it. It's the 5. I see A's, and I see a little upper neighbor tone with that B going up and down from the A up to the B and back down to the A. So we're going to have a 5 right there. Now, here's the thing. This next measure is our mystery measure, okay? And the thing that should set off the red flag about this being a mystery measure is that we have an added sharp inside of this measure, and that can happen, okay? That can happen, and whenever you do add a sharp or a flat to that measure, from the point that you add that sharp or that flat, all the other notes on that same line or space will be sharp or flat. So in this case, we have a C sharp, and it's the very last C sharp in the measure, so we don't have to worry about that. But if this was the first note in the measure and it was sharp and there were 3 other C's in there, all 3 of those C's would be sharp, and you would only have to indicate that on the first one, all right? So why do we add a sharp? Well, just like any language, when we're reading something that we don't understand, sometimes it's best to gather our context clues first. So we're actually going to skip this measure and we're going to analyze the next one. That way we can have the full context of what is on either side of this measure, and we can analyze from there. So if we take a look at the right hand, we see that we have a bunch of Ds. We have an octave Ds there. We have another D, we have our F sharp. That leaves one passing tone between those two chord tones with that E. So this is also a 5, all right? So we'll go ahead and label that 5. All right, so our mystery chord is something that has to do with 5. And this is actually going to show you some cool stuff about how these 5s work. Now, if you think back, what chord needs a C sharp? This may be a little difficult to know right now because we haven't gone over our chords yet exhaustively. In our next unit, I promise you that we will really drill those chords, but I'll go ahead and let you know that that's an A chord because our A chord has an A, C sharp, and an E, right? So what is an A chord doing in this piece? Well, let's take a look at our circle because that's going to shed some light on it. If we look at our key that we are in right now, the key of G, right? Here we are. And then our 5, of course, is clockwise to the right of that. Well, look, here is A, right? So this chord that we've added, it's not crazy. It's not all the way on the other side of the circle. We're not adding a D flat that has nothing to do with this. We are staying in that closely related section right there. And so what we are going to call this is we're going to call this a 5 of a 5, or a secondary dominant, right? So far we've been pulling our rubber band, our harmony rubber band, creating that tension. And whenever we get to the 5, we can make it a little tighter by maybe adding a 5/7 like we've seen. But now if you really want to pull that rubber band even further, you can actually step slightly outside of the key signature and use the 5 of the 5 or the secondary dominant. So in this case, A is the 5 of D, and we're using that to then really pull that bowstring and have it go back to 5 and then back to 1. So let's take a look at how we would indicate that, all right? So when you have a 5 of a 5, you write it like a fraction, 5 over 5, just like that. And underneath that, I'll label that as our secondary dominant, all right? Here's the thing about secondary dominants. Almost 9 times out of 10, when you see an extra accidental being added into a measure, unless it's just a passing tone or a neighbor tone, if it's functioning harmonically, it's going to be a secondary dominant. And I promise you, we are going to see secondary dominants a lot. So I will be referring back to this in future lessons, and I'll say, oh look, in this measure we have an added sharp or an added flat. What could that be? Well, think back to March where we started this whole thing. I promise you the secondary dominant will be showing up many times in our adventures. So don't forget about it, all right? I'll go ahead and even add that to our key up here. So we also have the 5 of the 5. Sorry. And that's going to be A, C sharp, and E. All right, there we go. Continuing on, we know that the 5 needs to lead to the 1, right? So we can anticipate that this next chord is probably going to be the 1, and it absolutely is because we can even see that the melody is repeating itself from the beginning. We have another 5 here. And then this next measure is a little bit tricky. We have a lot of motion going on in both hands, but let's go ahead and take a look. This is going to be one of those measures that has 2 harmonies inside of it. We have our first harmony and our second harmony, and then we're going to wind up here. Now here's the thing. Let's anticipate this. Before we even look at any notes, let's take advantage of the fact that we're looking at harmony and think, what would logically work here? We are coming off of a 5. We need to get to a 1 at the end, right? And so if we're going to do that, if we work our way backwards, we have a 1. Well, what precedes a 1? A 5. And what precedes a 5? Between those two right there, a 1, right? So now what we can do is we can look and we can see, does that match the notes? Does our predicted harmony match the notes? So let's see. Is this a 1? Do we have a B? Do we have a G? Do we have a B and another G? Look at that. That's a whole lot of 1 harmony right there. So yes, absolutely it does. And then in our next one, we have A, we have D. Oh, and look at that. We have C. And we can remember from last time when you add a C to a D chord, it's a little bit more tense, right? So that's not just any kind of 5. That's going to be our 5/7, all right? And then the very last measure, we have nothing but G's, G's, octave G's, and so that is going to be our 1. We were able to predict that before we even read a single note. The beauty of understanding harmony, all right? Now let's go ahead and put our hands on this piece. So we're going to start with our right hand, and again we're going to be in G major position. So for the most part, this is not going to leave our G major position. We will have to stretch our fingers an octave towards the end of this line, but it'll go something like this. Starting on the B with our middle finger, it will go like this. To the 2 on the second measure on the A. Straight up and measure 3. Don't forget that C sharp. Now we're going to put our pinky on that top D and stretch our thumb down to that octave D below it. And then for the next line, start with our middle finger again. To our second finger on the A. There we go, fantastic. Now let's take a look at our left hand, all right? So this is going to be set up in that reverse G position where you're going to start with your thumb on the G below middle C, and then you're going to have the top 5 notes of the scale. All right, now don't forget that F sharp. People do that a lot, and that's going to be our second note that we need. So we're going to go ahead and read it. We're going to have our thumb on the G. Then we're going to go down to the F sharp. We're just walking down the scale. Our middle finger is going to be on the E. Walk down one more to our 4th finger. And then we have octave G's here, just like that. All right, now before we move on, I want to take a look at this second to last measure, all right? So right here in the left hand, we have a musical cliche, all right? Now a lot of people have trouble with this measure because as we can see, there's a lot of motion going on in both of our hands. But if you think about it correctly, you can actually make this much easier than trying to read 2 lines of black dots that are moving. If we think about it in terms of bigger shapes, then we can understand this. So the reason we're going to focus on the left hand is because that's the only hand that actually needs to move. When we focused on the right hand a minute ago, you can notice that the beauty of it is that you don't have to move it, right? So we're always trying to see which hand is moving the most, and that's the one that we want to focus on the most, whereas the hand that doesn't move, we can sort of put it on autopilot. So the right hand is just going down from the middle finger to the thumb and back up to the middle finger. That's really easy. We don't need to worry about that too much. The part that hangs people up the most is this bass line right here, okay? So we're going to embrace our inner bass player right now, and we're going to see that these notes are actually a very, very common bass cliche, all right? So what we do is we start with our thumb on that G, and then we have to jump our 4th finger all the way down to the B. All right, so one thing you can do to practice this is just simply put your thumb on G, put your 4th finger on B. Put your thumb on G, put your 4th finger on B, right? Once you get down to that B, you can walk up. So it goes G down to B and walk up. And then you just have your octave Gs. Now we've heard this a million times. Have you ever heard a bass player go? Right? Anytime you walk down, anytime you make that jump down from do down to mi, and you walk it up, you're doing one of the most famous bass lines ever, right? And as pianists, we do have to become bass players as well. So instead of thinking about it so much as just random black dots. Think, oh, my right hand is going to be on autopilot, just twiddling these three fingers right here, and I'm going to play this very cliche line in my left hand. All right? So let's go ahead and try to put this together now. There we have it, all right? So once you get comfortable with hands separately, then you can put it hands together. And then of course, don't forget to add that final polish at the very end with a little bit of our dynamics. We have a mezzo piano, we have a forte, and then towards the very end, we are gonna do a decrescendo. And there we have it, week 5. All right, I'm looking forward to week 6 when we're gonna finish up this unit, be done with our major scales, and get into chords. I just love chords, and I think you're gonna have a lot of fun improving your ability to see and understand chords. So happy practicing. Remember, you can download all of the material that you saw on the lesson today from my website, pianodojo.com, and I'll see you next week.